October 27, 1962. A Soviet submarine, B-59, drifts silently in the deep Atlantic, suffocating in heat and silence. The battery is dying. Oxygen is low. They haven't heard from Moscow in days. Above, U.S. destroyers drop practice depth charges, hoping to signal the sub to surface. But to the men below, it sounds like war. The Soviet captain believes the United States has attacked. He orders a nuclear torpedo to be readied. Only one man stands between that torpedo and World War III. Vasily Arkhipov. In our timeline, he says no. He stops the launch, and the world continues. But in another timeline, he doesn't. The Cold War was not just a standoff. It was a global death match in slow motion. Two superpowers, each armed with enough nuclear firepower to destroy the Earth multiple times over. The United States and the Soviet Union didn't fight directly. Instead, they postured, threatened, spied, and prepared for a war neither wanted to start. But both were ready to finish. From Berlin to Korea to Cuba, the world became a chessboard. And in October 1962, the game nearly ended. When U.S. reconnaissance planes photographed Soviet nuclear missile sites being built in Cuba, President John F. Kennedy knew the clock had started ticking. Missiles just 90 miles from American shores meant just a few minutes' warning before impact. The U.S. responded with a naval blockade and demanded the missiles be removed. The Soviets refused. In response, American forces went to DEFCON 2. Strategic bombers flew constant loops. Submarines positioned themselves near coasts. Nuclear weapons were loaded and ready. The world held its breath. While the world watched the surface, under the sea, something darker brewed. The Soviet submarine B-59, cut off from communications, drifted dangerously close to confrontation. The crew, baking in 120-degree heat, exhausted and desperate, heard explosions above them. The U.S. Navy's warning depth charges. The captain and political officer believed the war had begun. They voted to launch a nuclear torpedo at the U.S. fleet. Protocol required all three senior officers to agree. Only Arkhipov said no. But in this alternate timeline, maybe he hesitates. Maybe he's outvoted. Maybe the stress breaks him. This time, he says yes. The torpedo is launched. It strikes the USS Randolph, an American aircraft carrier in the blockade line. The torpedo is launched. It strikes the USS Randolph, an American aircraft carrier in the blockade line. Hundreds of sailors are killed instantly. Flames erupt across the Atlantic. The blast is unmistakable. Nuclear. News reaches Washington within minutes. President Kennedy is rushed to a secure facility. His advisors are divided. Some call for restraint. Others argue that inaction now is suicidal. They believe the Soviets struck first. There's no time to clarify. The world's most powerful military gambles on what it knows. Kennedy authorizes a limited nuclear strike on the missile sites in Cuba. 3 American warheads launch. They vaporize the missile bases and several Soviet soldiers stationed there. Moscow sees it differently. To them, the U.S. has struck first. Again. Soviet submarines in the Atlantic respond. Medium-range missiles are fired from Cuba. 3 of them successfully reach their targets: Miami, Tampa, and Washington, D.C., are engulfed in fire. The White House is gone. Leadership passes to military commanders. The red button is pressed. Within the next hour, American ICBMs streak across the sky. Hundreds of them. Soviet radar detects the wave and responds in kind. Nuclear missiles leave silos across the USSR. Strategic bombers drop warheads on major population centers. U.S. submarines fire from underwater. The second wave begins. New York, Chicago, Boston, Dallas, San Francisco, all vaporized. Moscow, St. Petersburg, Minsk, Kiev, obliterated. NATO allies are struck. London, Berlin, Paris, gone. China, already suspicious of both sides, retaliates against U.S. bases in the Pacific and against the Soviet Union. India, Japan, the Koreas, all are caught in the crossfire. Global war becomes global extinction. Airports shut down. Communications fall apart. Hospitals are overwhelmed. Fires rage uncontrollably. Water becomes contaminated. The ozone is shredded. By the end of day 1, over 120 million people are dead. Day 2, another 200 million. Most deaths are not quick. Radiation burns, collapsed buildings, suffocation and dehydration take their toll. And then, the world goes dark. Not metaphorically, literally. Smoke from the firestorms rises into the stratosphere. It circles the globe, blocking sunlight. Photosynthesis halts. Crops fail, and then the world goes dark. Not metaphorically, literally. Smoke from the firestorms rises into the stratosphere. It circles the globe, blocking sunlight. Photosynthesis halts. Crops fail. Global temperatures plummet by 10 to 25 degrees. This is nuclear winter. The sky stays dark for months, in some places years. It snows in summer. Rivers freeze in India. Famine becomes universal. There is no supply chain, no rescue effort, no functioning government. There's just survival. In this world, money is worthless. Power is held by those who control water, food, or guns. Cities are deserted. Wildlife vanishes. Disease spreads without medicine. Birth rates crash. Death rates soar. Even in areas that weren't directly hit, the aftermath is unavoidable. In South America, crops rot in freezing temperatures. In Africa, drought and famine sweep the continent. Australia, one of the few countries untouched by direct strikes, is overrun with refugees and collapses into internal conflict. No place is safe. In the United States, the continuity of government bunkers activate. Politicians survive, but the people don't. Law and order vanishes. In the Soviet Union, the few survivors in Siberian military facilities slowly starve as logistics fall apart. China is ravaged by internal war. The global economy, once interconnected, disintegrates overnight. The few survivors are scattered across ruined continents. Some live in underground bunkers, others in remote villages that somehow escaped direct fallout. They tell stories about the old world, about cars and music and warm summers. But the world they inherit is cold, radioactive, and silent. The age of humanity ends not with a bang, but with a million scattered cries for help no one can answer. And all of this happened because of one moment, one misunderstanding, one nuclear torpedo launched in panic, one man who didn't stop it. In our world, Vasily Arkhipov said no. He stood his ground in the heat of crisis and possibly saved the entire human race. He was not a president or general. He commanded no armies, but history pivoted around his voice, and he used it to say no. In this alternate timeline, that voice is silent, and the world ends with it. We often think the Cold War ended with speeches, handshakes, and the Berlin Wall falling. But it could have ended much earlier, in silence, in ashes, in a sky gone black. That was always the risk. That still is the risk. We survived by inches, by chance, by a man the world nearly forgot, but not in another timeline. Subscribe to explore the histories that almost happened and the worlds that never got the chance.